Hello, Facebook friends and family. Hello, world, I should say. My name is Ilea Kiera Williams, and I am here today just to introduce myself to the world and let you guys know who I am and where I come from. So I'm going to set my phone over here and just start running off at the mouth. Again, my name is Ilea Kiera Williams. I am 33 years old at the moment. I was born July 9th, 1990, to my mother, Tashima Monique Williams. And I have had one hell of a life. And I always said that I was going to write a book about my life because I felt like I had a story to tell. Well, no one else really feels like I have a story to tell. A lot of people kind of think that I'm just useless or I have no purpose here on earth, but I do have a little story that I want to tell, and I want to take the time to do that. So, the purpose of me wanting to write a book or tell my story in the first place is just to let you know that you can make it through anything, even if you believe that is no way out or that there's no other options for you. I'm here to tell you that some way, somehow, through God, there are plenty of options, and to never give up in life. And I say that because life has been very hard for me. Um, I didn't have the greatest childhood for what I could remember. My mom was sick. My dad was not in my life at all. And we had a hard time trying to make it. We lived with my grandmother on and off. My mother was sick. My grandmother was sick. You know, life was not easy. So when coming to write a book, I always struggle with where do I start and what do I start talking about first? Well, a lot of things come from trauma. So I think I should start with the first trauma that I can remember, the trauma that I've experienced in life. And that was witnessing the struggle, I guess. It's like I was born and I can remember things, I want to say probably since like the age of 3. And I remember being a gifted child. I do remember that. And life not being so easy. I witnessed a lot of things that most children probably wouldn't witness. So here it is. Um, Being a young child, my mother was very beautiful, but she was very weak minded. And again, we lived with my brother's dad from. Hold on. You know what? Oh, I want to start it over. We lived with my brother's dad. My brother and I are 3 years apart. So I'm not quite sure how my mom met my brother's dad or when they began talking or anything like that. But I do remember living at his house, and that was off of Plymouth and Longacre. Um, and we lived there with him. And I never understood why, because he was so mean to my mother. And he would beat her. And I mean, really beat her like she was a man on the streets. And she would still get up every day. She would go to work and she would come home to this man that beat her. And I watched this and I hated it so much. I hated it so much because I couldn't understand why we wouldn't leave or why we wouldn't get our own house or what was the issue. Why did we have to stay at my brother's dad's house and my grandma was alive and like, Mom, why are we here? But she stayed. And it got so bad to the point that he would lock us in the house. We had those doors with the bars that look like prison bars, and you have to push the lock down and you use the key and it will pop up, and then you slide the little bar over and you can open the door. Well, my brother's dad used to lock us in the house and we couldn't leave. And I remember several times my mom would call my grandmother or she would call her best friend, and they would come over to the house, but we couldn't get outside the house and they couldn't come in the house because he would lock us in the house. So she would be talking to my family through the bars as if we were prisoners or as if we were animals at the zoo and people could come by and watch us. And I remember very vivid things that happened to me there. Like, she would leave me with him while she went to work. My mom used to work at it was called the Wellness Plan at the time, and she used to work there. And I remember one day she had left me there. She got off of work at 5 o'clock, and she had left me home with my brother's dad, and he made some food. I was only like 3 or 4 years old, and there were onions in the food. And you know, a lot of little kids don't like onions, but and I was one of them. And I was telling him, you know, I don't eat onions, so I don't really want to eat this. It's going to make me throw up. And he was like, well, I cooked that food, so you better eat it. If you were hungry, you would eat it. So I began eating the food, but I put all the onions to the side, and that had made him mad. So he came over to the table and he hit me. And he hit me so hard that I had fell to the floor. And the impact was so hard that I instantly threw up. And when I threw up on the floor, he got even more mad. And he was like, why would you throw up? And you know, if your parents ever joke with you and they're like, if you throw up, I'm going to make you eat it. Well, or if you throw up, you're going to clean it up. Well, he hit me again and I fell into the throw up. And he made me sit in it. He's like, now sit there and clean it up. And I just was crying because I said I didn't eat onions. So why would you make me eat these onions? To the point that I threw up. And then when I threw up, you hit me. You hit me to the point that I threw up. And then you hit me again and you made me sit in the throw up. And then he left me there by myself and he took my brother, who was about I don't know, 2 or 3 at the time. He took my brother to Chuck E. Cheese until it was time for my mother to get off of work. And then, you know, I guess by the time it was time for him to pick up my mom, she had asked where I was at and why wasn't I in the car with them. And he said that I said I wanted to stay at home. But why would a little kid want to stay at home by themselves? And when my mom had got there, I was asleep up under the dining room table in the throw up. And she was like, well, what happened to you? And I'm like, he made me eat the onions. And it made me throw up. And he hit me so hard. And he told me to clean it up. But instead of cleaning it up, I just was crying myself to sleep. And I fell asleep in the throw up. So my mom, she was so afraid of him too. She's like, well, why did you do this? But it was like no resolution. Like, shit, because I can. This is my house. This is not my child. You should find somebody else to watch your child, basically. Like, I don't have to deal with this. And I didn't ever understand that. Like, Mom, why are we here? I hate him. I hate it here. But we didn't leave. And then there was another time he was beating her so bad. My brother was a baby. And this is why I'm saying I have very vivid memories from being a little child. And my brother was a baby and he was beating my mom. And see, my brother's dad, he used to have guns everywhere through the house. It would be guns up under the couch, guns up under the pillows of the couches, so we couldn't touch the couches. And then if you went upstairs into the house on Longacre, it's an attic, and through the attic there would be guns up there. And he was very quick to pull the guns out on my mom and shoot. And one particular day, they were upstairs arguing, and he pulled a gun out on my mom, and he shot at her while she was trying to run down the stairs. And her shoe had fell off a little bit, and the bullet went right through her shoe, her gym shoe. And my brother was a baby, and he was in her arms. She was running down the stairs, and he shot through the shoe. And I was so scared, I ended up calling my grandma. And my grandma came to pick me up. And I remember walking to the car and I was crying so bad. Like, I don't know why we here. I don't know why my mama won't leave. Like, he shoot at her, he beat her, he hits her. Why won't she leave? And my grandma like, I don't know, Aaliyah, but you can come with me. And I ended up going with my grandma. My grandma had an apartment. The apartment's off of I want to say that's Linwood in Davidson. When they're all burnt up now, but my grandma used to live there, and I had went and I lived with my grandma there for a long time, for a while, because I hated to go home to my brother's house. But I had to sometimes because I went to Coolidge Elementary, which was right around the corner from, I think it was on like Elmira or something. And I had to go to school. But I really hated being at home. So those are very vivid memories. And that's why I'm not too fond of domestic violence. I don't play about people putting their hands on me and people, calling me out of my name and hitting on me and things like that. I would never be a victim of domestic violence because my mother was a victim of domestic violence and I witnessed it as a child for a very, very long time. And then it finally got to the point where maybe my mom got a little bit of sense and she broke free from my brother's dad. And by doing this, we ended up having to leave the house one day. We ended up living in a shelter. And while we lived in the shelter, I don't know if things got better or worse because being a kid and living in a shelter and having to walk to school, you get picked on by the kids who go to school who don't live in a shelter. And they used to pick on us, me and all the other kids who used to walk from the shelter to school. And I can't remember the name of the shelter that we lived in, but I remember the name of the school that I had to attend while we lived in the shelter. And it was Parker Elementary. And me and the kids, and my little brother too, all of us who lived in the shelter, we had to walk to school. And the other kids would pick at us. They would point at us while we was walking and everything. And I remember that. That's why I don't like to talk about people in their living situations or whatever they may possibly be going through because you never know. And anyway, I remember having to stay in the shelter. And granted, we went to the shelter. And my mom did take care of us. Again, my mother wasn't a fucked up individual. She just was sick. So, like, she had jobs, but she could never work them long because she was sick. My mother was a diabetic since she was 16. She got on dialysis by the time that I was 8 years old. She had kidney failure and she had real severe stage 2 diabetes. So working was not something that was very easy for her to do. So she ended up having to get Social Security disability. And I remember this. And with the disability and her waiting to get on Section 8, we had to live at the shelter for a short amount of time. And then once she got the Section 8, of course, she got her voucher and we got a house. It was on Rockdale in Brightmoor. And I remember living there and I was so proud of my mom and I was so happy that she broke free. And around this time, I think I was in about third grade, the time that I'm speaking of now. And I went to Hubert Elementary. My teacher name was Miss Stevenson, and then my other teacher was Miss Jones. And I loved them, actually. Anyway, when we broke free and we got our house on Rockdale, we didn't have to deal with my brother's dad anymore. But of course, a parent being a parent, or a father being a father, or somebody who wanted to control someone else's life, he claimed that he wanted to come and get my brother sometimes and see my brother at times and pick him up because that was his son. So my mom had told him where we lived at on Rockdale, and he came over there one day, picked my brother up, of course, and then brought him back like it was a normal pickup. I'm about to get my son for a few hours, and then I'm going to drop him back off when I'm done. But then that turned into now he knows where we live at. So it would be nights that we would be trying to sleep. And he would come over to our house. And he would beat on the door. And my mom would ask him to leave. And he wouldn't leave. he would harass us. He would beat and beat and beat on the door. And he'll go around to the backyard and he shine his flashlight into my mama's bedroom window. And he'd beat on her window until she would eventually go to the side door. And just like the house on Rockdale that he used to lock us in, we had the bars on the outside of our door. So he couldn't get in. But you could open the regular door. So one night my mom had opened the door, but the bar door was still locked. And he was trying to force his way into the house, and she wouldn't let him in. She wouldn't unlock the bar door. She was just holding the regular wooden door, asking him to leave. And he took his hand and he pushed her. He pushed the wooden door and pushed her down the basement steps. And then I woke up and came out of my room, and I was scared. And she was like, Aaliyah, call the police. Call the police. So I called the police. But by the time they got there, he was gone. But my mom ended up coming from back up the basement stairs. And she had this really huge knot on her head. And it's like I was scared all over again, because now he knows where we live at again. What are we going to do? How do we live here? How are we supposed to feel safe? So then it came time for us to get restraining orders and protection orders put out on him. But that didn't go too far, because my brother daddy had all these brothers that was police officers at the time. So they used to take these police reports out of the system and make it seem like my mother never even called on him. So he would continue to harass us. And that's why I have a problem with the police like how I do now, because it's crooked officers like that, which is why people never get justice. So we finally had got away from him, and we moved into another area. And then he found us again, because my mother thought that he wanted to be a good dad to his son. And he started harassing us all over again. And granted, it was about control, because as long as we would be at his house, we had food. He would make sure that it was something for us to eat, something for us to drink, and everything. As long as he knew where we were, what we were doing, what my mom was doing, and that he knew that we couldn't leave. He wouldn't leave her any money, but he would leave scratch-off tickets that had that were winners, and he would leave those there. And he would say, if you need anything, call my brother and tell him to go cash this in, and he'll bring it back to you. It was terrible. And I remember those things very, very vividly. And that's why I do not agree with domestic violence. I don't agree with people having so much control and power over your life and your finances and telling you what to do and things like that. I hate it. Now, granted, I believe in love. I believe in teamwork, make the dream work, and partnerships and splitting bills and things like that. But control and power over another individual's life is nothing. I will never believe in anything like that. I witnessed my mother be tortured with no help. And the justice system and the judicial system, they were no help for her. It's like almost like she was defeated. And that's why I'm such a fighter the way that I am now with the justice system and anyone else, because I watched my mother be defeated and defeated and defeated. And she tried her best. She was a good woman. And through her sickness and everything, she still tried to raise me and my brother to the best of her abilities. Even my cousins, because when we lived on Rockdale, despite all the stuff that we were going through and my mama fighting off my brother and the domestic violence and everything like that, and trying to get on her feet and get Section 8 so she could take care of her own kids, in that same house on Rockdale, my mama got a phone call in the middle of the night from my cousin, my cousin was at the house by herself with my other little cousin. My uncle was at work. See, I come from hard-working people. My grandma, my uncle, and my mama is all I knew growing up. And they were all hard workers, but they all had a hard time. And my mama got a call in the middle of the night one night, and it was from my cousin. My cousin is the same age as me. And she like, Auntie, I need you to get here because the police here, and they getting ready to take us to the police station, because my mama called the police on my daddy, and she said that we was at home by ourselves. So my mama ended up having to go get my cousins, my two cousins, from the police station. and she ended up getting temporary custody of them. Mind you, we had just got out of a shelter ourselves. And we only lived in a little 2-bedroom house on Rockdale in Brightmoor. Me and my brother shared a room, and my mama had a room. But now my cousins live with us too. So, in the midst of that, having temporary custody of them, the CPS was involved. CPS used to have to come to our house a lot. And that was something different as well because my mother was sick. And it was only, now at this time, my mom, me, my brother, and my 2 little cousins. So when my mother would have to go to dialysis, we would have to sit in the house by ourselves. I'm not 100% sure what my uncle, well, actually, I do know what my uncle was going through at the time, but I don't want to talk about that. He was fucked up. So my mama had custody of my cousins. And being that she had custody of them, CPS would have to do pop-up visits at our house. And there would be times that CPS would do pop-up visits at our house, and we knew the routine. CPS just pulled up, everybody be quiet. It was like the Jehovah's Witnesses got there. Everybody be quiet. Turn the TVs off. Act like we not home. Sometimes my brother and my little cousin, we would hide up under the bed because the CPS, they would look through the windows to try to make sure that we wasn't there by ourselves. They would sometimes come at the times that my mama was at dialysis. So we knew the routine. Be quiet. When you hear them coming, don't say nothing. Try not to be seen. Don't move around the house. You don't want your shadows to be shown through the blinds or anything like that. So it got to that. And we had white neighbors too. And it came to the point where my mom would have to ask them while she went to dialysis if they could just watch our house. So it was one time that CPS had came, and we were actually, my cousin and my brother was playing a game. And I don't know if we just didn't hear them pull up in enough time or what, but they knew that we were there and we wasn't answering the door. So my neighbor came to the house and he was like, oh, I'm watching them for their mom. Their mom is at dialysis right now. And she was like, oh, okay, well, why are they in there and they won't open the door? And he's like, well, because they're not supposed to open the door for strangers. And she's like, oh, okay. She ended up leaving. But those things I will never forget. And that's the reason that I don't like to leave my kids alone in certain environments. And I'm very protective over them because I know how CPS works. And I know how it is to lose your kids to the system or have them have to live with other family for a temporary time and things like that. I know about foster care and things of that nature. So that's another reason that I am the way that I am, and I'm very overprotective over my children and domestic situations and co-parenting and things like that because I have witnessed a lot growing up. And it was times where, and even family situations, it would be times where living with my grandma, my mom, and my uncle would fight my grandma. Like I said, everybody family go through stuff. We had difficult shit. People be on drugs. People don't be out of their mind. Sometimes people have to get their shit together. And I witnessed a lot of different things. I done lived in the house with the lights cut off before. I done lived with people trying to figure this out. I done had, my uncle knew how to turn that shit back on too. Oh, the lights got cut off, DTE gone. Let me go back to this backyard and flick this box, connect this wire, and do this and do that till we got some lights back on. We knew how to burn the fireplace. Like, I come from the trenches. I come from the struggle. I come from people making a way out of no way. I know how that shit go. I come from domestic violence. I come from poverty. I come from fucked up ass situations. And I don't want to be that. So I move extra slow. I think about everything that I do 10 times. And then I make moves. And a lot of people don't understand why I choose to do the things that I do and why I move the way that I move. But it's because I've seen so much. And I try to avoid being in the same situations that I seen my mom go through. Or my uncle or my grandmother for that matter. Again, very strong people who had challenges trying to start their own businesses, wanting to live their dreams, and just a lot of different things getting in the way. And I've seen it and I witnessed it. And that's another reason why I never give up. If I want to start a business, who is anybody to tell me that I can't start a business? they used to tell my grandma she couldn't do a lot of stuff. Oh, she can't sing if she wanted to be a singer. She can't sew. She can't do this because she can't read. And my grandma couldn't read. She wasn't a good reader. She didn't go to school. And I helped her do a lot of things that she had to do. When it came, that's why I know how to pay bills and all that type of stuff. And when it came time to filling out any type of paperwork, enrolling myself in school and everything after my mom passed away, like I had to help my grandma with that because my grandma, she didn't know how to read well. When it came time to paying insurance policies and signing leases and all that, I was right there by my grandma's side because I was reading over the paperwork and she was the one that was signing the paperwork. So that's why when I was a teenager and my grandmother was sick and she had to go and live in the nursing home, I was at home alone by myself. I knew how to pay the bills. I knew how to go stand in line at DTE. I was writing the money orders. I was gassing up the car, going grocery shopping and everything. As a young ass kid, I never had a childhood. And the childhood that I did have was not the greatest. Granted, I can't say we didn't have good Christmases and things like that. Again, my grandma worked at Hostess, my mom worked at Hostess, my uncle worked there, my mom worked at Lear. I mean, they knew how to get good jobs and keep them, even with no education. That's what I'm saying. I come from people who made a way out of no way. So can't say I wasn't taken care of, but not like most. I wasn't. I wasn't. And life wasn't so terrible because I learned a lot. And again, I had family. I had my mother. I had my grandmother. You know? So that's just a part of my life and why I am the way that I am and why I move the way that I move when it comes to myself and my children. People wouldn't understand a lot of the things that I do, you know? But, anywho, after my cousins had came to live with us on Rockdale, we still was experiencing my brother daddy, coming over there, harassing us, torturing us. And it wasn't good. It was terrible. It was terrible. And we had to fight our way out of that as well. You know, my uncle ended up getting himself together. He got custody back of my cousins, and then it was back to just me and my mother and my brother. And we finally was able to move from over there on Rockdale. And the next place I remember moving to was on Tyler, off of Wildermere, Dexter Davidson, over in that area. And I ended up going to McCullough Elementary, and that's where I spent fifth grade. And even there, it's always seemed like it was still such a hard time. We lived in a flat, and we couldn't get it right there either. Like my mom, she had her little boyfriends or whatever, and they would come along and try to be stepdads or parents and help her do whatever it is that she needed to do. And granted, she had some cool boyfriends. I ain't gonna lie. She had this one boyfriend named Aaron. I really liked him. And she had another boyfriend named Derek. And I really liked him. And they did. They helped her take care of us a lot or whatever. But then again, that came with stuff too. Oh, he got a girlfriend or he got a wife and he got a baby mama. So now that's a problem. They trying to fight my mama. They harassing my mother. Like, it was always nonstop, you know. That's why I don't deal with niggas who got bitches and yo bitch, you got a bitch and this is going on. Like, you don't know what you want to do. If you want to break up with this person and talk to me, or like, I don't put myself in those type of situations because I witnessed that growing up as well. It's like, granted, you can like somebody too, and that's called life. People got to figure out who they want to be with and everything like that, but not enough to cost you your own peace and sanity, you know. So while a lot of people be like, you don't fight for nothing, you don't fight for love, you know, some stuff you just shouldn't have to fight. It should come naturally, and people should be grown enough to make decisions and make ways so that their life is peaceful. Nobody should want a life where you always fighting with your spouse either, or your spouse can't stop cheating, so now you fighting with third parties. I witnessed that growing up as well. And a lot of the things that I witnessed as a child is trauma. and you have to figure out how to get over childhood trauma. So the way that I chose to do that was like, think twice. Don't stay in a situation where things are bad and you can clearly see that they're not getting better. Because granted, sometimes you gotta thug it out until things get better, but sometimes you gotta pick up and leave too, because ain't no thugging it out if your life is on the line, you know. So that's another reason I move the way that I move as well. But then going from fifth grade, my mom finally getting her Section 8, and we in houses and things like that. Well, now it seems like it's a problem with, oh, well, how is she on Section 8 and she don't got no job? She only got Social Security. She got these two kids, but she do still manage to have, decent things or whatever, nice furniture. It's like, once people stereotype you, they just expect you to be so fucked up. Like, I remember when she was trying to get out the shelter, and I will never forget this. She had on a gray jogging suit with some K-Swiss, y'all. And we were applying for assistance. And the lady was like, well, you don't look like you need to be in the shelter. Your hair done. You got on nice clothes. What you here for? Like, because she got beat on at the house that we were at. Like, what was we supposed to come here in? Scraps? Yes, people want to see you. When you say that you went through this or you went through that, people want to see that that's what you went through. They don't want you to have nice clothes. They don't want to see that you at least a little bit decent. They want you to be 100% fucked up, begging for help, begging for assistance. And I don't like that. That's why right now I've been without a bridge card for 5 months. Granted, I can use one for sure, and me and my kids be needing food and everything, but for somebody to belittle you so much, I would rather not have it. And people don't understand that either. Or why you don't go live with your family. People don't be knowing the shit that family be putting you through either, or that stuff that family even went through. Like, family don't like to talk about the embarrassing things or the fucked up shit that family do. And that's crazy to me. But I will never forget. I'm forgiving, but I will never forget some of the things that my mom experienced. And she was the one who was helping people. She was taking care of other people's kids. She was so kind and so nice, just like how I was. Doing for everybody. But when she needed a handout, who was there for her and her kids? Nobody. Like, but at the same time, that's life. My mother needed to be strong enough to get up and move instead of being beat on or dealing or tolerating it. Or like, why you ain't never called the FBI, mom? You seen the police wasn't helping you. You seen things wasn't getting done. Why you wasn't on the news? Why you wasn't fighting? At least if you didn't want to fight for yourself, fight for your kids. And then, like, my brother daddy always used to try to say that my brother didn't belong to him. He belonged to some other man. I never forget, he came to our house with a picture of some other man saying, this is his daddy. I'm not his father. This is his father. But, the moment that my mom passed away, he came at my grandma's house with more papers too, trying to take custody of my brother, which he did get. And my grandma was going back and forth to court to fight for my brother, because my brother had never lived with his daddy. He never claimed him. He didn't want to deal with him for real. Like I said, he used to beat the fuck out of my mama. He ain't really give a fuck about me or my brother or nothing. But the moment my mama died, he came to try to get custody of my brother. And then he used to talk down to my brother, like, look at this little death benefits check I get from your mama. This little Social Security. She ain't never have a job. She wasn't worth nothing. She wasn't good enough. You only get $400. At least if I was to die, you would get $1,000 check. But, like, yo drunk alcoholic ass only came to adopt my brother in the first place because you knew that my mother passed away and that he was about to start receiving death benefit checks. Then it came to the point where he wouldn't let my brother come to my grandma's house. And my grandma used to have to fight for custody, grandparents' rights. So we had the right to see my brother every other weekend. And then when every other weekend would come, he would not open the door, or sometimes he'd let my brother come. Sometimes it'd be a problem. So we would have to call the police in order for my brother to come outside. I remember all this shit, and I ain't gonna never forget it. But I don't hold grudges. I just remember, because how could I forget? It was terrifying. Like I said, I went through a lot of shit. In my whole life, it was just me, my mama, and my brother. And like I said, fights, watching my mama try to get houses, go through the system, not get no child support from my daddy or my brother daddy, no help from nobody. I watched that, so I know how it is. I do. And I do kind of understand sometimes why she tried to stay places and thug it out, but at the same time, I didn't understand why she didn't move and find other solutions as well. Thug it out somewhere where you're not getting beat on. You know, yeah, some places it's going to be unfair. That's just like a shelter. You got to be there at a certain time. We had to be there by, I think, 8 o'clock at night, or we couldn't get in. We would get up in the morning and leave for school, come back. By the time we got out of school, my mom would take us somewhere else, probably to my grandma's house or to my uncle's house, cook us food, and then we would have to be back to the shelter by 8 o'clock, or we would be locked out and we would lose our spot, and she wouldn't be able to get to Section 8. All that shit was torture. Where was anybody who was helping her? Who? She didn't have kids by herself. But it's kind of like she did. Leave that door alone. I'm making a video. Don't come in here. It's like she just had to figure the shit out. And I understand that because that's where I am now. Having to figure it out. But I refuse to sit somewhere where I know that people are belittling me or trying to bully me or they keep stealing from me. No, I'm calling the cops. Yes, I'm writing the feds. Yes, I'm telling on the police. No, nobody better not put their motherfucking hands on me. No, nobody better not touch my kids. The CPS better not take a motherfucking child of mine, so no motherfucking where. That's why I act the way that I act when it comes to that stuff. Okay? So then, I want to talk about my mother's passing. You know, she was a fighter. But a lot of people don't know how my mom passed away. Well, she was sick, like I said. She had kidney failure and she was on dialysis, and she had stage 2 diabetes, very bad. And it hindered her from working, so that hindered her from being able to take care of us, you know, financially. Even though she was a good parent when it came to emotional support and things like that, because she was good at listening, she was good at talking and everything. She just wasn't good at saving herself. But, you know, she always was like, if I can get a job and I can just make so much more money, then I would be able to get a house. But the thing is, she was sick as fuck. So she got on the waiting list to get a kidney. And my mom missed the first call when it was time to get her kidney. And she cried like a baby. Okay, y'all? Then, months later, she got a second phone call. And when it was time for her to do the surgery, they had ended up saying that something was wrong with the kidney or something, so she didn't get it. The third time they called for my mom to get a kidney, we was at church. And she missed the phone call. And for some reason, I don't know, she went to the bathroom and she seen that she missed the phone call. We was still at church. And she came out in the hallway and she was just crying and crying and crying and crying. And we went to a real small church, the True Remnant of Jesus Christ. It was on 6 Mile and Myers. It had about, maybe all in all, 20 members. And my mom was crying so bad, and the bishop and the first lady, they're like, well, what's wrong? What's going on? And she's like, I missed the call again. This is my third time missing the call. They're going to take me off the list. I missed what call? She like, for me to get a kidney. And they, you know, they started praying and they prayed for her and they're like, it's okay, call back, call back. And she called back up to the hospital and they're like, yes, you know, we've been trying to reach you. We need you to get up here by 6 o'clock in the morning. We got this kidney for you, the kidney and pancreas, and we need you to come in. So the next morning, you know, me, my brother, my grandma, we all gets up. We go drive my mom to the hospital. My mom was married at the time, so she had her husband. And he drove her to the hospital, and we all sat up there for the hours that it took for her to have her surgery. And she came out of surgery, and, you know, everything was supposedly A-okay. Well, you know, after my mom was discharged from the surgery, she got her kidney, she got her pancreas, and she went home. My mom was healthy for all of about 3 weeks. 3 weeks. And then she started getting all these, like, lesions all over her body. Like, her eyes started turning yellow. They said that she had had jaundice and that her liver was fucked up all of a sudden. And so after the surgery, after she got the transplant, about 3 weeks after, she ended up being admitted back into the hospital. And she didn't look herself. She didn't look the same. She had such flawless skin and nice hair. But at this point, her hair had fell all out. Mind you, I just cut my hair and stuff, and just it's wet and everything right now. I just washed up and took a shower and washed my hair and everything. But my mom's hair had fell out. Her skin had all these black lesions all over it, and then she started getting holes, busting, like her skin was busting open, and her eyes were yellow, not light yellow, yellow, yellow. Sorry, I get lemons. I eat lemons. But yellow, and they said she caught jaundice, and then her liver was failing, and that her body had took a turn for the worse, and that something must have been wrong with the kidney or something. My mom never had hepatitis after she got her transplant. Somehow, some way, somehow, she ended up with hepatitis. And my mom lived 3 months after she had her transplant. And 2.5 of those months, she lived in the hospital. My mom died in the hospital. I used to go to the hospital every day for those 3 months. When school started, that was my freshman year of high school, 9th grade. I would get up and I would drag myself to school. I hated going to school because I wanted to go be with my mama. It's like I can feel her leaving me. So I hated going to school. But I would have to get up every morning and go to school. And because my mama was sick and she couldn't work or nothing like that, she was really bedridden in the hospital. You know, my grandma was trying to get everything together, and it was hard for her because, mind you, my grandma was sick too. She was on a fixed income, living off of Social Security. So, like, I didn't have the finest clothes and shoes and stuff at this point in time. Shit was just going bad. My mama was sick, dying. My grandma was sick. So, you know, I'm trying to drag myself to get up every day to go to school. And after school, every day, I would go up to the hospital. And I said my mom was bedridden on her deathbed. She was still trying to do my hair so I can go to school and look decent. And she was like giving me her clothes and shoes and stuff. Like, well, you know, Aaliyah, I can't go shopping for you right now, so you could just wear my stuff. We was the same size. We was best friends. Before she got this transplant and shit, they thought we were sisters. So she like, just wear my clothes and shoes to school. And I'm like, no, like, I don't want to. I'm sad. I don't want to go to school. But anyway, I was fighting every day going to school. After school every day, I was going to the hospital to see my mama. And I would stay up there until 10 o'clock at night. Me and my grandma, we was just sitting up there. My brother. And it got to the point, like, I want to say the night before my mom passed away, me, my grandma, my mama, her husband, and my brother, we was just at the hospital. And I was sitting there, and, you know, she started talking. But it's like almost she was talking out the side of her neck. And she like, oh, I see Aunt so-and-so and Aunt so-and-so. Those are my grandma's sisters that had passed away previously. And my grandma had started crying like, I'm like, Grandma, what's wrong? She like, yo, mama, she keep on saying that she see my sister. And my sister passed away already. Like, she talking to the people who passed over already. So she popped the pass, and my grandma was crying so bad. And I'm like, no, she not, Grandma. It's gonna be okay. But at the same time, I kind of knew that my mom was about to pass away too. She couldn't move. She couldn't get out the bed. She went from at least going to the hospital. She could walk herself to the hospital bathroom in her room. She couldn't do that no more. She had to get the bedside commode. So I really watched my mom deteriorate. And then it was getting to the point where it was hard for her to breathe. So, you know, they like to give you Xanax and Roxanol and stuff to help you breathe. Or for anxiety, they say you anxious and your heart beating too fast. So they basically sedate you. Well, my mother was sedated. And she was talking to the dead. She was talking to my passed over loved ones. And the nurse was like, oh, well, don't worry about it. But I was watching the machines, and I was seeing that my mother's heart rate was dropping. Mind you, I was a very smart kid, and I always wanted to be a nurse growing up. So I knew, like, what was a normal heart rate and what was not. So I called the nurse in the room. I said, nurse, excuse me. Mind you, I'm only 14 years old. I said, my mama's heart rate is too low. Like, something wrong. And they like, oh, it's just because she's sedated. It's okay. So I'm like, no, I don't think so. But they're like, don't worry about it, just try to get you something to eat. So my mama husband had ended up going to McDonald's to get me and my brother some food. And when he went to get the food, I sat there the whole time and I was watching the machine go down. And I was eating my food or whatever. And it got time to, it was like 11 o'clock at night. And I had school the next day. Me and Denzel, my brother. So her husband at the time, his name was Mark. He was like, okay, I'm going to take y'all home. And my grandma had stayed at the hospital. She's like, well, I'm going to stay here with Tashima. So I'm like, okay. And we went home that night. And my grandma, she ended up going home later. She ended up calling me, telling me when she was at home. So my grandma would get up every morning and go to the hospital as well. So my grandma got up in the morning, her regular routine the next day. And I had my mom's cell phone. And my mama's cell phone rung, and it was my grandma on the phone. And she's like, Aaliyah, you need to get up here now. And I'm like, okay, it's early in the morning. And I just threw on the clothes that I had on at the hospital from last night. And I started waking up my brother, and I woke up my mama husband. I'm like, my grandma just called. She said, we need to get to the hospital right now. My mama not doing good. And I swear, I believe Mark was flying to the hospital. But that was the slowest car ride I've ever experienced in my whole entire life. I know we probably got to the hospital in about 15 minutes, but I swear it felt like 3 hours. And I remember driving down the lodge, because we lived in those apartments on 6 Mile and Myers. So the lodge is right there. And my mama was in Henry Ford Hospital. I remember hopping on the lodge and driving up Pallister, passing Pallister and stuff. And I remember seeing the hospital. And my mama, I believe she died in room number 424. Or something like that. 424 or 464. She kept being moved back and forth to ICU. And when we was on the freeway and approaching Henry Ford Hospital, it's like my eye went straight to her room window. The walk to the room was the longest walk ever heard. Walking the Green Mile or walking to death row. The walk to my mama's hospital room was like walking to death row. Okay? I got in the hospital. We got to the 4th floor, and I got off the elevator. And my grandma was in the hallway crying. And she's like, Aaliyah, your mama not about to make it. Your mama not about to make it. She's like, Shima about to die. Tashima about to die. And my uncle was on the way up there. My uncle and my cousins was on the way up there. And my mama's brother was up there anyway, because his wife had just had a baby. And he had ended up coming up there too. And by the time we had got there, I went to my mama's room door. And she was laying on the bed. And there was so many doctors and nurses in her room. And they was cutting her legs up with all type of scalpels. And they was sticking tubes in her legs trying to get something going. They was trying to get oxygen in her body because they said she didn't have no oxygen. Her heart rate was dropping. It was real faint. And they had the machine to shock her heart. Like they kept doing it. They kept rubbing it together and shocking her. And they was turning it up. And turning it up. And her body was so fragile. Every time that they would shock her, her body flew up off the bed. And I was watching this, and they were all trying to save her so much they wasn't paying me no attention. And I was watching the whole thing happen. And one of the doctor or the nurses just happened to look up, and he seen me watching, and he got mad. And he started screaming. He like, why? Why are y'all letting her watch this? This is her daughter. Why are y'all letting her see this? Close the curtains. Close the curtains. And they closed the curtains, and they slammed the door. And I was just in the hallway with my grandma, and we was both crying. And my uncle ended up getting up off the elevator, and my cousins. And then the nurse came out, and they like, I'm sorry, but it's nothing we can do. And my grandma just screamed. She was screaming. And my uncle was screaming. My cousin was throwing up. My brother was screaming. And I was sitting there because I couldn't believe that they was telling me that my mama was dead. Like my best friend was dead. My mother is dead. and I'm never going to be able to see her again. And I couldn't cry. I could only watch. And everybody else was crying and throwing up and screaming and falling out. And I was staring because this felt fake to me. Like how is my heart still beating and my mama's heart not beating? And they finally let us in the room, and my mama's eyes was wide open. And my grandma went over to my mama and she closed her eyes. And she was like, I can't believe my daughter gone. But the whole time it's like I couldn't believe my mama was gone. But like 3 days and up until my mama passed away, I started seeing her in the casket in my dreams. I started seeing her in the casket. And my mama knew it was time for her to go too, because like I said the night before when I was at the hospital, her heart rate was just going down. And my grandma said after we had left and went home that night, my mama was trying to get out the bed, which was weird because she wasn't getting out the bed. She was like bedridden. And my grandma said she kept throwing the cover over, trying to stick her leg out the bed. And my grandma had to keep putting her leg back under the bed. And she like, Shima, where's you going? And my mama said, Mom, open the window. Like, you got to open the window. It's time for me to cross over. Like, I need to go outside. You have to let the sun in. It's time for me to cross over. I'm not supposed to be here no more. My grandma like, Shima, what is you talking about? It's not time for you to go nowhere. But the very next day, she was gone. She crossed over, and she knew that it was time for her to cross over. And we all had to just accept the fact that it was time for her to cross over, and she was sick, and she was tired of fighting, and she didn't want to suffer anymore. But I couldn't believe it. I didn't want to believe that my mother had passed away. And even at her funeral, when she passed, she didn't have no insurance or nothing. My family had to come from New Jersey and everything and gather money to bury my mama. My mama ended up getting buried, and we still owed the funeral home. To the point where they was like, oh, well, we gonna let y'all have a service and everything, but after the service, if y'all don't come up with the rest of the money, we're just gonna have to put the body back into the freezer basically, and then bury her when y'all come up with the rest of the money. We like, what the fuck? My uncle ended up going to jail. It was a lot of shit. It was a lot of shit at the time. It was a lot of shit at the time. So I remember all those things very vividly, and I say all that to say that's why I moved the way that I moved. Like my mom, she struggled so much while she was alive. But the whole time she was trying to figure out how to make a way, to the point that it made her sick and it killed her. And even on her deathbed, her main wish was to get out of a situation and be able to take care of her kids. She's like, I only wanted a transplant so I can get a job and I wouldn't have to depend on Social Security no more and food stamps. She just wanted a job, but she was sick and her health kept hindering her. She couldn't do what she wanted to do, but she knew how to do a lot of stuff. She was just like me, a jack of all trades. Like when she was sick, she would take stuff to dialysis. She would crochet blankets, and she would be doing that while she was on the dialysis machine, and she would sell them to the people at the dialysis center. And then like she would make little necklaces like this with the beads, the badges and stuff. She would make those while she was sitting in the dialysis chair, and she would sell it to all the people who worked there. She made money. She knew how to do hair, and she was very talented. She knew how to sing, all types of stuff. My mother was very beautiful and very talented, but she had a very hard life. And I witnessed it, and I remember it very vividly. I remember her trying so hard, overworking herself, making herself even more sick. I remember all of it. All the way up until I witnessed her take her last breath. A fighter. A fighter. Just trying to beat the system. And that's why I am the way that I am now. Same thing with my grandma. My grandma was a fighter. A fighter. My grandma passed away when I was 24 years old. But my grandma was sick too. And that's why she couldn't help my mama that much either. My grandma ended up having to take care of me when my mom passed away. And my grandma always had diabetes my whole life. But she didn't get on dialysis till after my mom died from kidney failure. And I want to say my mom passed away, and 2 months later, my grandma's kidneys failed, and then she became a dialysis patient. So I didn't never have a childhood, because at 14, my mama died, and then at 14, my grandma's life took a turn for the worse. And it's like, it did that because she lost her daughter. For the first 3 months after my mother passed away, my grandma called me Tashima. She would stare me dead in my face and call me Tashima instead of Aliyah. She was that distraught over my mom passing away to the point that it made her sick as fuck too. So I go and live with my grandma at the age of 14, and she becomes a dialysis patient, and she's sick as well. She keep having sugar attacks, diabetic comas. I wake up, my grandma passed out. I gotta hurry up and go get some sugar, pour it in the orange juice, mix it up, get a straw, try to make her drink it, or I gotta give her glucose to make her come back and snap into herself. Every day, every other day, my grandma passing out. I'm calling the hospital. She's passing out. It's to the point where now they like, did you give her the sugar already? We'll be there. We know you know what to do. You know. So it comes to the point where my grandma started having to, get her leg amputated. She gets gangrene. She a fighter though. She got one leg amputated. She on crutches. She got a wheelchair. My grandma still going to work. Still trying to make ends meet. She finally get her Section 8. She's still trying to make it though. Working up under the table, still trying to pay off extra bills, still trying to help take care of me. Mind you, I even got a job at 15. I was working at one of her friends' restaurants. We trying to make shit work. My grandma ended up getting her second leg amputated. Mind you, I'm still trying to live my life. Like, damn, I experienced all this shit, but I still want to live too. I finally get me a little boyfriend. End up getting pregnant and shit. I get pregnant, had my daughter at 17. So now I'm a teen mom and my grandma alive. But my grandma talked about me being pregnant like a dog, but she loved my baby. She really took care of my baby too. So, it's just me and my grandma and Lex. We just thugging it out. Or whatever. My uncle, every blue moon, he would have to come and stay with my grandma. But for the most part, my uncle was a businessman. He was into fixing houses and shit. So, he do what he got to do. He get him a house. He take care of what he take care of. And he come check up on my grandma, see how things going, and, keep it pushing. So my grandma getting sick. Now I'm trying to raise my kids that I got, and my grandma getting sick. I'm trying to work, raise my kids, live my own life. But now my grandma getting sick. She got cancer now. She had colon cancer. So she ain't want to tell me she had colon cancer at first, but I started noticing like my grandma getting sicker, opposed to the diabetes and the dialysis. She's getting sicker. She didn't want to tell me. She found out she had stage 2 colon cancer. So she going to radiation and everything for that, and she finally gets rid of the cancer. But she still, got this kidney issue going on. And she asked me that I think that she should try to sign up for a kidney transplant. But at this time, I'm against that shit. Like, shit, my mama got a kidney transplant. It took her out in 3 months. You even more sick than my mama was, and you older. So I don't think that's something that you should try to do. She like, you right. So she's thugging it out. Boom, cancer come back again, stage 4, colon cancer. She can't hold her bowels. She can't hold down no food, nothing. She in the nursing home. From the nursing home, she got to go back to the hospital. So mind you, I'm pregnant at this time. I'm trying to take care of everything that got to be taken care of as far as, okay, move my grandma's stuff from here, put it over here, do this, do that, do this, do that. So now it's into the point where it's almost time for me to have my baby. But my grandma not doing too well, so I got to put her on hospice. I put my grandma on hospice. I think she was on hospice for all of 3 days. And then she just didn't want to do it no more. She was fighting though. And my grandma had went into a coma right before she had passed away. She wasn't talking or nothing. I would just come into her room and just start talking to her. Like, oh, hey, grandma, I'm here. And, she would never talk back. So I just eat my food up there, watch the soap operas, because my grandma used to love watching soap operas. I watch the soap operas up there. She wouldn't talk back to me, but I'll just leave it on, eat my food up there, and then I'll leave. And when it was time for me to go pick up my kids from school, I used to go to the hospital every day and see my grandma just like I used to do my mama. And then after I put her on hospice or whatever, I go to the hospital. I start telling my cousins and my brother, like, okay, y'all, I had to put grandma on hospice. They said she not doing too good. And by this time, my uncle's sick. He done had a stroke, so it ain't much he can do. So I'm like, basically it's time. So we all come up to the hospital and everything, and we sitting down and talking to my grandmother. And then I'm like, all right, grandma, I'll be back tomorrow. And my grandma had talked to me. She like, Aaliyah, you don't got to come back tomorrow. It's like, I'm not going to be here. I'm going to die. I'm going to pass away tonight. And then my cousin was up there. She started crying. I'm like, no, you're not, grandma. Like, I was shocked that she even had started talking to us and stuff. Like, she was so sick the days prior that it shocked me that she was up and trying to talk to us. But she said she wasn't going to be there no more. She was going to pass the next day. So after we had all left or whatever, I had came home and I couldn't sleep. I couldn't sleep. And my baby daddy, he was just doing whatever he wanted to do. He didn't give a fuck. He was hanging out with his friends and shit, cheating, having more kids, all types of shit. So I got up the next morning though, and he happened to be coming to my house, and I'm like, hey, do you mind coming up to the hospital with me? Like, my grandma, she not doing too good, and I don't really want to go up there by myself because when I was there last night, she said she was going to pass away. And he like, yeah, I'll come up there with you. She ain't going to pass away. And the moment, y'all, that I get into the hospital room, and I'm like, hey, grandma, I'm here. She like, Aaliyah, I'm sorry. And I'm like, why you sorry, grandma? You don't got to be sorry. She like, I'm sorry, I got to go. And I'm like, okay. And then her voice started, like, a lot of times when people get ready to pass away, they get like this little gurgling in their throat. And that's why you have to get them stuff like Roxanol and stuff, just help them breathe and relax while they try to transition. So I called a nurse and I'm like, hey, my grandma's gurgling. She's having a hard time breathing. Can you give her some medicine? And she like, okay, sure. She leave out and she come back in with the needle or whatever and puts it through my grandmother's IV. And the gurgling stops, and she's not breathing as hard anymore. But then she eventually just took her last breath, and her eyes stayed open. And I'm like, Al, can you close my grandma's eyes for me? Because I didn't want to go and close my grandma's eyes. And he like, yeah, I'll go close your grandma's eyes for you. And he closed my grandma's eyes for me. And I went and I called the nurse, and I'm like, hey, I think my grandmother has crossed over. And she like, what? And they knew me because I used to come to the hospital every day. Even when my grandma was in rehab. I used to go to the rehab every day. And I'm talking about pregnant, wobbling up in that bitch, cooking my grandma food, taking her food every day and everything. They knew me by name. Like, hey, Aaliyah, hey, Aaliyah. So, same thing when my mama was in the hospital. So, it's just like, when they passed away, like, the nurses and everybody was so sad for me. Like, they fought so long, you fought with them so long, and you watched this all the way down to the end. Like, we feel sorry for you. But, I mean, it's nothing that they can do, and it was time for them to cross over. And I got tired of seeing my mama struggle with sickness and suffering. And I got tired of seeing my grandma struggle with sickness and suffering. So, I did what I had to do till I couldn't do no more. And my grandma passed away, and I planned her funeral. The little bit of insurance policies that I had in my possession, I cashed them in. I paid for her funerals. I bought all the flowers. I tried to do the obituary to the best of my abilities. I did everything by myself, step by step, all the way down until I had to leave her body at the grave site. So, I witnessed a lot. And my mother's death and my grandmother's death taught me a lot. And I watched them from the time I was born all the way to the time that they took their last breath. And granted, they struggled and they weren't financially stable. They were good to me. They loved me. They were good mother figures. They were very strong women. They didn't let stuff beat them down. They fought. Only thing my mama let beat her down was a man. My grandma, she didn't play that shit. She didn't have no man beating her down. None of that. She was a fighter. My grandma reminded me of Harriet Tubman. I always joke about Harriet Tubman and shit and say that that's my auntie, but that's because I come from my grandma and she reminds me of Harriet Tubman. No matter what, my grandma didn't have no education, no nothing. She still did what the fuck she needed to do. Her legs got cut off. She had prosthetics. She still got the fuck up and walked. It's like, so how can I let somebody beat me down so bad to the point that I would not want to do nothing when I had watched my mother and my grandma have to fight along to breathe in this bitch. And see me, that's how I am now. It's like I don't want the disrespect. I'm not gonna have a man beating on me. I'm not taking all these injections and making people believe that I'm sick and have all these illnesses and get all these shots and blood transfusions and stuff so that they can wipe me out of here. The stuff that I've learned and witnessed from my mother and my grandmother's transition is why I don't believe in medicine. Why I do shit like eat motherfucking lemons all day and think about herbs and shit like that. I've witnessed too much and I've learned too much. And even doctors and shit, I learned how they do black market and organs, and they'll kill you on purpose to take your organs and sell that shit. I talk a lot of shit because I live that shit. Not just because I'm some conspiracy theorist, believer, or shit like that. No, I witnessed this shit. I lived through it. I seen it. Okay? I seen it. Firsthand. So, that's just part of my story. That's part of why I am the way I am when it comes to a lot of things, and why I think the way that I think, and why I move the way that I move, and why sometimes people would be like, oh, well, you could have just had it easier if you had did this or if you had did that. But I know what it's like for people who thought it would be easier. Oh, if I live with a man, it'll be easier. If I just deal with this or put up with this, at least he making sure I got a roof over my head. Yeah, but we miserable. And we trapped in this bitch. And we can't leave. We're prisoners. We're treated like animals. So that is the stuff that I experienced. That's a lot of the reason and a lot of the trauma that I had to get over. And I don't hold grudges and I don't want pity for it. It's just explaining why I move the way that I move. And a lot of stuff I had to do by myself. Even after my grandmother passed away, and while my grandma was here, and while my mama was here too. It's like, we don't have no big family here. It was only my mama, my grandma, and my uncle. So, I witnessed a lot of stuff, and I was the one that was just taken care of. It's like, my mama had me, and I was my mother's daughter. But it's like, I needed to take care of my mother. And then granted, my grandma, she taught me everything as far as like, okay, well, here go the money. This is how you pay the bills. This is how you do this. This is how you cook. This is how you feed yourself. This is how you do this. This is how you drive. My grandma taught me all this. My grandma said, Ali, you gotta learn how to drive. Get behind the wheel. And we started driving. Then she put me in driver's training. I used to drive myself to driver's training. And my driver's training teacher, he said, what is you in my class for? You driving this car better than me. Because I need a license. I had to get my license when I was 14 and 9 months. Because I needed to drive my grandma to dialysis. So I was able to get a license early. So I dealt with a lot of shit. I was grown early, That's why I am the way I am. And I had my kids early. And I experienced a lot of shit. I don't know. I'm real clingy. I was, at one point in time, real clingy to people. Because I didn't have a family. Not a big family, at least. I used to adore big families. And I always wanted a big family. And that's why I'm glad I got a lot of kids. Yes, it'd be hard trying to do everything by myself sometimes. But I'm a fighter. And me and my kids gonna be okay. Yeah, sometimes shit get hard. But I keep on pushing. And I'm on a mission. And I got a goal that I'm trying to reach. And it has been many tests and obstacles that was thrown in my way. Many challenges. Many people taken away from me, my loved ones, and a lot of stuff that I just had to figure out how to do by myself. I had to teach myself a lot. Like, my mom passed away when I was 14. I wasn't having sex yet. I didn't know about a lot of sexual health. And then, when I did start having sex, like, I'm thinking, oh, I only got having sex with this one person. I wasn't thinking like, oh, well, shit, he out here having sex with 20, 30, 40 people. So I had to learn about that. Like, just because you ain't out here having sex with all these people don't mean that this person ain't. And, I had to teach myself a whole bunch of shit. Like I said, I had my daughter. I got pregnant at 16. I had my daughter by the time that I was 17. I had to be the mother. I had to teach myself to be a mama. And, like, I had breastfeeding and all that type of stuff. I was teaching myself all this shit. Learning it. Googling stuff on YouTube and figuring out like how to get stamps, how to get WIC, how to get this. I was doing that at 16, 17 years old. But see, I was hindered from stuff like Section 8 because I always lived with my grandmother or something, so she was getting the Section 8 or under my name. My grandma was getting paid for me and my kids to have Section 8 with her, and I had my own house. Like, I was just making sure my grandma was straight in many ways, even if I wasn't around her. Like, oh, you need a 3-bedroom apartment, put me and the kids down like we live with you. Even though I was living at my baby daddy mama house, or then me and my baby daddy had got us our own little flats. We done had a few, we stayed in a few houses. I was still up under my grandma's Section 8 voucher so that my grandma can have somewhere to live. And at one point, my uncle was living with my grandma and stuff too, up under my Section 8 voucher. Up under that. So, I ended up having to get a job, and me getting a job so I could provide for myself and my kids caused my grandma to get kicked off of Section 8 because, like, grandma, I have to work and take care of my kids, so I got to file taxes. And, I remember all of that shit. So, yes. Mommy, I just get a toothpaste. No, I was looking for it this morning. So, yeah, I had to. I think Lo had it when she was here, but then I asked for it and she just left and she ain't say nothing. But yes, I got through all of that. I made it through that. And after I had my grandmother, but again my grandmother was sick. So it wasn't really much that she could do, but she was there for me. She was there for me. She passed on knowledge to me, passed on wisdom that she had. And I take that now and I use it and I apply it to my life every day. I made it this far because of what my mama and my grandma taught me. And most people probably think, well, you ain't that far in life, but no, I am. And they ain't know that much. You just said they ain't had no education, but they had knowledge. They come from Eastern Stars, too. They had secret knowledge. Occult knowledge, I guess, whatever you want to call it. Like, I don't know. I just applied what I was taught to life. And that's why I am the way that I am, and I move the way that I move. And I know one day everything that I work hard for is going to pay off. And I stood for what I stand on it. I watched them, and the sickness hindered them. It took them out. That's not going to be me. That's why I say all the time I don't get sick. I don't take medicine. I believe in herbs. I believe in God. I believe in the universe and the Most High to heal me and to provide for me. I don't depend on a man because I seen how women's life can be when you depend solely on a man. I depend on God. I depend on God. And for any and everything that I need, any and everything that I want to do, I depend strictly on the universe and the Most High. So that's just a part of my story and a little snip of what I've been through as far as losing my mother and losing my grandmother due to illnesses and what they've been through as single moms trying to raise me and, just make sure I had a roof over my head and was able to survive and make it through. So, yes, I miss my mother and I miss my grandmother dearly, but those are my ancestors now and they protect me. Those are my spirit guides and they lead me and they tell me what to do. And they've been watching everything that's been happening to me since the moment that they took their last breath. It's like they've been here with me in spirit and they never leave me or forsake me, just like God. And I appreciate that. And on the days when I'm sad because I miss them dearly, I think about everything that they taught me and how I'm still able to move forward in life because of them. Because what they did teach me why they were walking this earth. Whether they was struggling or not, they taught me a lot. And that's what I try to teach my kids now. Like, granted, y'all daddy ain't in our lives and mommy might be having a hard time right now, but y'all making it. And I'm never going to leave or forsake y'all. Granted, this is the hard moment for us right now. I'm going to make sure we get through it no matter what. I'm not sick or nothing like that. I'm a fighter, too. And how the system was beating down my mama and my grandma and shit, denying them and not helping them and all that type of stuff, that's not going to be me. And see, I'm not going to depend on it either. Like, well, let's just get this Section 8. And, they want you to depend on stuff like that, too, because it could be a hindrance. And once they get you to depending on it, then they make you feel like you need them and stuff like that. That's why I feel the way that I do about the government, public assistance, doctors, and things like that. They will lie to you Doctors will lie to you and tell you you got a disease that you don't even got just so they can get paid off of prescribing you medicines and shit. I don't believe in a lot of different things because I've been an eyewitness to a lot of stuff since the day I came out my mama coochie. So, lemons, it is. Herbs, it is. Tea, yes. But that's just part of my story. That's why I'm into herbs. Like I said, I used to want to be a nurse growing up until I damn near lived in the hospitals because my mama and my grandma was sick, and I don't want to be a nurse. You know, if anything, I want to be like Dr. Sebi. But that's just why I am the way that I am when it comes to certain things. So that's part one of me just telling my little story and letting people know who I am and where I come from. So yeah, I can't really speak too much on my dad because I don't know him, or I didn't know him that much. I always knew who my dad was, or my mom told me who my dad was and things like that. But I didn't really meet my dad in the physical flesh until I was like 26 years old. I went down to Georgia for my brother's high school graduation. And that's the first time I really sat with my dad and hugged my dad and talked to my dad and things like that. And that was in 2016. And after that, he would call me every blue moon and we would talk, and I would let him speak to my kids, and we would chop it up, and he would ask me how was I doing and how were the kids and why am I doing stuff by myself? Why won't I move down to Georgia? And I'm like, well, Dad, I don't know. I always been doing stuff by myself, so I'm kind of used to it or whatever. And he like, well, I don't like you taking care of them kids by yourself, Aaliyah, blase splee. I'm like, well, it's okay, Dad. I kind of been doing it. But I think, like, my dad, he wanted to help me because he didn't raise me at all in my life. He wasn't here in the physical for me or financially. So when I did meet him and I had children or whatever, he would call and check on me and check on my children. And he was sick, too, from my knowledge. And then my dad was in a real bad car accident, or what he told me, a bus accident. And then he got sick. I only got to know my dad for 2 years, and then he passed away on Thanksgiving. So, it's not really much I could say about him. And even him passing away was a lot on me because I'm supposed to be the first of kin. I was his firstborn child. So when he passed away, I had to come down to Georgia, sign all type of papers, allegedly. I probably was signing over a life insurance policy. I don't know. I was just trying to save my dad. They kept telling me, oh, he's sick. He needs this type of surgery. We need you to sign for this. We need you to sign for that. Like, I don't know him. I don't even know this man. I just met him. What? You want me to do what? He about to die. What? I was panicking. Then I had to come back home. I was just finding out I was pregnant. I was trying not to lose my job. I had just started working a new job. And then it's like they calling me at work. Oh, we need to deface your dad. We need you to sign this. Do you give us verbal permission to do this? Like, it stressed me out. Oh, Jesus. My mom, my dad, and my grandmother are deceased. And those are the most people that you need in your life. You need a mama, a daddy, and a grandma. And I just did not. I don't have those. And their deaths were traumatic to me. And it was a lot for me to have to get over and a lot for me to experience. And I made it. I made it. And now I'm just trying to live, and I pray to God that my kids don't experience the stuff that I had to experience when it comes to the sicknesses, the deaths, and the loss of parents and everything like that. They experience the struggle because I do everything by myself. But granted, stuff haven't always been a struggle. It's hard times right now, and we still making it. I know people who ain't even... Listen. This is part of my story, y'all. I just wanted to tell a little snip. Might tell some more later, I don't know. But yes, have a great day, family. Love on your family, love on your kids, love on your spouses, appreciate your mothers, your fathers, your grandparents, and all that nice, loving stuff.